Hello, and Happy New Year. Seriously, Happy New Year to everyone. The title of this video is Happy New Year because it's a lot of people are having a very fearful time right now because of what's in the news. And I wanted to talk about fear and anxiety so that it can help us all with these feelings that we're getting, and maybe a little explanation into why things are done. I mean, everything that's done out there in the world with this World War III that might be going on with Iran, it was all caused out of fear. All of it. You don't go and assassinate somebody if you're not afraid of something. Something that you make up in your mind that may or may not happen. And people who are unaware and unconscious, when I say unconscious, let me define that for you. Conscious is being aware of your emotions, your feelings, and what you're putting out into the world and what you're getting back. Unconscious people are controlled by fear, and they just run around and react, unaware of how their actions and what they're putting out and what they're getting back out of the world. But first, I want to start off talking about the new year. And this is the time of year. The New Year's celebration and Christmas are basically one and the same. They're both celebrating a birth of a rebirth, a new cycle. Now, some people celebrate Christmas as the birth of Jesus Christ, and that's fine, although even in the Bible itself, he wasn't born that time of year. Mary was eating figs off the tree, and you don't pull figs off the tree in December in the Middle East, where supposedly. So, you know, it was more likely around August if Jesus was actually born, and if he even existed. And that's a story for another time. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But New Year's and Christmas are the solstice. They're on the solstice for a reason. And it's to celebrate a new cycle of the earth going around the sun. And the earth and the planets and the moon and the cycles of where we are in this cycle, how much daylight we have right now, it is a good time of year. The stars are in your favor. The emotions that you have and the clarity that you have at this time of year, because your awareness and your consciousness is affected by everything in your world, the universe, what's going on. And this time of year is a time to propagate new ideas. Time to bring them forth and start anew, like the new year. Between now and the spring equinox, the new year back in the old calendar was celebrated on April 1st. But when the Roman Catholic Church changed to the new calendar, they moved the new year to the winter solstice. And then they proceeded to call everyone who still celebrated the new year on April 1st, April Fools, because they didn't want them to celebrate on those days. That's where April Fool comes in. That's where it originates from. People were called April Fools if they celebrated the new year on April 1st. This was just to move people to a different calendar. I just wanted to bring that up for those that don't know that. And this whole time in the spring, from now until April 1st or March 22nd, which is the spring equinox. This is the time to propagate new things, to stop thinking about it and start doing. Start planting the seeds for your next adventures, your next chapters, what you're going to do. Myself, I have started a new YouTube page, because as people who listen to me and will watch my videos know, I do them mostly in the winter, because in the summer I'm a beekeeper and I do a lot of beekeeping. I have a beekeeping YouTube channel and Facebook page called The Hip Bee, or Wes Perron or Wesley Perron. You can look it up on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. And this year I'm starting something new, Hip Bee prospecting. Because in the summer months, when I don't put many videos up on this page in the summer, because I prospect in the summer. And I spend a lot of time in the outdoors, and that's where I connect with nature, with God, with this universe. I'm in the rivers and enjoying myself and living. And if you want to see that, I decided this year I'm going to post some videos of how to prospect, where to find gold, and how it's done as a recreation, and working with the environment and not being destructive, because it can be done. And I'm going to show that to people, and you can watch it. I'm going to put a link in the description for that page. It's the Hip Bee Prospecting on YouTube and on Facebook. I'll have a link for both of them, and it would be great if you come over and watch those, because there's some videos up there now of me doing some gold panning and different things. But now on to this video about fear. That's what I want to talk about today, fear and anxiety. And a lot of us, we have fear. Fear is a natural thing, but that's what I want to talk about. Fear controls people more than what the average person realizes. Everything that's done, is almost everything that you see on the news with unconscious people, is done out of fear. When I say unconscious, I mean people that are not aware of their actions and how fear controls them. And in society today, there's a lot of anxiety, and people are trying to bring up the emotions related to these fears. People have fears. What's going to happen to me? What's you know, they're questions. I mean, there's many things you can be fearful for, but let's think about death, because it has to face everybody. It's a fearful thing. It's an unknown. And people get anxiety. Some people, at one time in my life, I did at night. I'd get this fear. And it can be overwhelming. Well, I'm going to talk about that and what we can do to change that. Fear is really not a real thing. It's all happening in our minds. That's what we have to understand. The things we fear are projections of what we think may and may not happen. Now, most of the time, these things don't even happen. And when on the small percentage when they actually do, when these things actually do happen that we fear, the emotions are completely different at that time. They're not the same as the fear you had way in advance of this. When you projected it and feared it, then they're not the same, because you're dealing with it. You're too busy dealing with the situation that you fear at the time when it's happening. Not when you have the anxiety. When you have the anxiety, you're fearing something that isn't even happening. It's in your mind. And we have to understand that. Now, how do we do that? Well, if you suffer from anxiety, as I did at one point, I don't anymore, because I understand where it's coming from. And I want to try to help people that have these anxiety and fear. Now, you can get it from different ways. The first way is by your thoughts. Your thoughts create fears of things that may or may not happen to you. And these fears is because you're living out in front. You're not in the present moment. So when you have these fears of, oh, what's going to happen to me if this or if that, or someday I'm going to be dead and I'm going to face the nothingness. Take a breath. Take a breath. Get into this present moment. Look around the room and realize that it's not happening now. And that your projections of what may or may not happen may never happen. And when it does, the whole emotions are going to be different because you're going to be handling the situation. If there's a lion in the room, you're going to run. If there's a bill collector at the door, you're going to not answer it and talk to him. It's not going to be this horror. And if it is, even if there's slight possibility that these horrors that you imagine are going to happen to you, the emotions aren't going to be the same at the time because you're going to be busy dealing with it. So the way to handle these anxieties is to get into the present moment, right now. Right now. Take a deep breath and look around the room. There's nothing to fear. That's one way of our thoughts creating the anxiety within us. And the thoughts are projections of what may or may not happen in the future. And we got to realize that those things don't happen very often. And when they do, the situation's completely different than what you're feeling now. And the reason is because now you can't do anything about it. All you can do is think about it and follow that thought process into a fear. And it's just going to tie you up. And it can be a horrible experience. Anxiety is nothing to joke about. But it can be controlled when you face them. The answer is to stop, take a deep breath, look around the room, and relax. Take a deep breath. And then, when you do, and you've calmed down, when that point comes you calm down, now you got to go back and face what those thoughts were. You've got to go back and examine those thoughts that cause these fears. That's the answer to anxiety, is you have to face the thoughts that cause the fears, because those thoughts are false. They're not going to happen. They're not happening. But your body is going through, your body doesn't know the difference of whether it's just happening in your mind or it's actually happening. So you're creating these situations in your mind and your body's reacting in fear. Stop doing that. It's not as easy as said than done, but it's a choice. You can stop doing that. But you have to examine the thoughts and emotions that you're having that are creating these fears and look at the fears. You have to face them. Not by, some people face them by going out and physically, attacking a lion, which may not be the smartest thing to do. But you have to face them in your head. That's where they are. And ask yourself, why am I afraid of this? Why? It's not happening now. What can I do? Maybe there's things you can do to reduce this fear. Things that you do in your life. There are things you can do. But you have to get in the moment right now, because now is when you can do the changes to reduce your fears. Now, there's a second way these emotions can cause fear, and that's when built-up emotions in your body give you the fear. Your body gets fearful, and you breathe, you're getting the fear, and then that translates to the thoughts. So your body is going through the motions of being in fear, and that translates into your mind, and your mind makes up fearful things to match your body. It's not as common, but it can. Trauma. This is where trauma and fear are involved. This is the second way where there's built-up emotions that need to be released and examined. And these can come into you, and you can get the emotions of fear for seemingly no reason. And then the thoughts about those, then it comes into the mind. Then you say, well, why am I fearful? And you start looking at it, and you make up scenarios to be afraid of, and then it gets worse. And the truth is, there's nothing to fear. Nothing. Nothing. Danger is real. Fear is just in your mind. If you're standing on the railroad tracks and a train is coming, you're in danger. You don't need to be afraid. Just get off the tracks, and the train will go by. But if you fear the fact that I might not move, and this train may hit me, and you get these emotions that are not true or not real, because you are going to move. You're going to get off the tracks because you see the train coming. If you don't see the train coming and it hits you in the back, you'll never have fear. It's in our mind. And in order to get a grasp of the anxiety that grips us, we have to face those fears. And I guess the best way is to, the most common fear is death. Now, people fear death. I don't fear death, and some people don't fear death, but a lot of people do because it's unknown. Well, some people think that they go to this place up in a cloud somewhere and hang out with all their relatives. And some people think they just disappear into the abyss of nothingness. Either way, there's nothing to fear. Because if you're going to this place in heaven, okay, well, good, then you're going there. If you believe that, then there's nothing to fear. If you believe there's nothing, and you're going to disappear into nothingness, then you're not going to experience it. You're not going to experience it. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. You will never experience death. Fact. If you believe there's nothing there. Nothing happens. And you're going to go into the nothingness. Then there will be nothing. You won't experience it. Never. If you believe that there is a heaven or a hell, which are... Those aren't my beliefs. These are... Heaven and hell are beliefs that have been... I'm going to give it to you straight. You're already in heaven and hell. This is it. This planet. Heaven and hell is how you view the world. Most people are living in hell because they live in suffering. And that's all they see. And I see people talking about World War III and death and destruction and screaming, ah! That's what they see, and that's what they live in. But I live in a beautiful world. It's not that I don't see that going on, but I'm just an observer. I know why it's there. It's there because people are unconscious. They're living in fear, so they're running around doing fearful things and killing each other and doing selfishness. Selfishness is evil. So, when you sit back and observe the world as it is, there's nothing to be afraid of, and there's nothing to be in fear of. And heaven and hell was put into the Bible to explain these psyches in our minds. Not to explain where you go after you're dead. You have but let me tell you this. God, this energy, this light that created everything. There was an explosion millions of years ago. And this energy created you and everything there is. And that same energy is still in you. There's a little nuclear reactor in you that's a spark that keeps everything going. And science has proven that that energy never dies. It always goes somewhere. So you are not going anywhere when you die. You're always going to be here. Maybe not in this body, but the energy that makes up you will always be here. Is your consciousness going to be there? That's for you to decide and for you to find out on your own. If you fear death, it's because you haven't had an experience outside of yourself and with the source energy to make you believe otherwise, to make you think differently than that. But when you do, you'll step back and say, I question it now. Maybe my consciousness is connected to something more. Maybe this body means nothing, and I'm just one little piece of a larger picture. When you start questioning those things, death is just a different phase, a different growing process. Death may be life. Maybe when you came into this life, you died in a previous one. Now, these are things to think about, and I threw a lot at you here. Fear and anxiety are a real thing. Well, fear isn't real. It's in our mind, but that doesn't mean that it's not real, because it's real to us. But what I'm saying is it's not real. I'm saying it's not in the present moment. And it's a choice. It's a choice to be in fear and have anxiety. And when you understand that, you can change it. And I thank you for watching. Please hit subscribe and check out my new channels. I'll put links in the description box. And Happy New Year to everyone. Until next time, peace.